Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today is a quick learn, so slightly different format for this morning's session, something that we normally run on a Tuesday afternoon, but we're now experimenting with different times and dates as well. So it is a quick learn, which means we won't start till 5 past because we do like to make sure that all of the content fits into a half-hour slot. So now's the opportunity if you want to go and grab a quick cuppa if you want to, and we will start at 5 past. For the meantime, I'll just pop back on mute, but like I say, due to start at 5 past today. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we won't start any content until 5 past today. We will just do some quick housekeeping in the meantime, just so that you are aware of the format of today's session, just in case this is your first webinar or in fact your first quick learn with us. So first of all, if you are joining us, you will see your microphone is on mute, and that just means you can't speak to us directly. So if you do have any questions throughout today's session, then you can use the questions panel, and that's the icon that looks like the speech bubble with the question mark in the middle, and that will allow you just to send your questions across to us. We have Abby in the background. She's available to answer your questions throughout the session. And like I said, we do try to make sure we're wrapped up by 5 past. So please make sure that you get your questions to us throughout the session. Don't wait till the end, so that we can make sure we can get as many of them answered as possible, so that you can go to your next appointment on time. Okay, so what we'll be looking at today is the customer receipt feature, and it's mainly going to be demonstration. So there isn't going to be a handout for today's session because we do try to make this just purely demonstration. There will be an email sent to you shortly after today's session, which will have a copy of the recording. So if you do wish to watch it back, then you can do so once you've got that link there. There will also be links to our other sessions that are coming up over the next few weeks as well. So So what we're going to look at is a customer receipt, the ways in which you can post a customer receipt, because there is in fact a few different ways in which you can do those. We're going to talk about a payment on account or a deposit. So if somebody's paid you some money up front, we haven't yet got the invoice to post that against. And then something that we get lots of questions on, which is allocating transactions. And that's the process of marrying transactions up against one another, which we'll go through later. Okay, so that's us on 5Pass, so we can start making a move on the content there. Okay, so why would we do customer receipts? So this is the way in which you're going to record money into your business, but relating to a customer. So a customer that you're dealing with on a regular basis. What you can also do is allocate that payment against an invoice. You can also enter payments for deposits, like we mentioned earlier. And the transaction types that we're looking at today are an SR, which is a sales receipt, or an SA, which is a sales payment on account. Now, today we are going to focus mainly on the customer side of things, but it's very important to understand that everything we're going to show you today can in fact relate to suppliers as well. It's a very similar principle. What you do have in addition though with your supplier side is you do have the option to generate remittances, and you can either email those or print them. Now we won't cover them in today's session because we have a whole session on remittances. So after today's session, do check out our webinar recordings page and you'll be able to find a recording to that session. Okay, so we're going to just go straight on to demonstrations of showing you that customer receipt, the payment on account, and allocating those transactions. So we're just going to pop into my data set, which I've created here. And it's a very small data set. I've tried to keep it nice and clean, so it's really easy to show what we're demonstrating today. So first of all, the customer receipt option is in a few different places. And what you will notice is regardless of where you click, they all take you to the same window. So it really doesn't matter where you select the option from. So first of all, you can see I'm in my customers module. I do have the option up here for a customer receipt, but I also have the option within the bank account module as well, so customer receipt. Now, because we're just going to show you the similarities with suppliers, in suppliers, it's a supplier payment, but in bank, what you sometimes find is supplier payment is actually grouped under payments. So just a little tip there so that you don't lose that feature there. It's underneath payments rather than on its own. And that can just depend on how your screen is in terms of your resolution. So yours might be separate, but like you can see on my version here, it's grouped together. Okay, so we're just going to go through the customer receipt window. I'm going to go through the customer module and click on receipt, and this gives us the option here. So the first thing we're going to look at is this section here. So this just allows us to pick which bank account the money is coming into. So it's important to get that right. Otherwise, we're going to have to start doing internal transfers to move money around. Then we can select our customer that the money's relating to. So again, like I say, just to keep it nice and tidy, we just created one customer for today. And what that then does is that brings up a list of all the outstanding invoices. So that's those that haven't been yet paid off or allocated against a transaction that are outstanding on the account at present. Now, what I want to do now is just show you some of the things that we maybe don't use and highlight some of those options along the top that might help make your life a little bit easier and maybe streamline your processing a little bit. So the first thing you can do is just a standard sales receipt. And to do this, what we're going to do is look at the receipt details. So as you'll notice, it's picking up my processing date, which is today's date. Obviously, if you want to change that, that's easy to do here. And you can change the processing date. If you're backdating transactions, you can do that in settings and then process date. Reference and extra reference are entirely optional. So these are your reference details that are going to help you to identify that transaction. But when it comes to making the payment, this is where we have a few different options. So we can go into the receipt column and type in the amount. So I can quickly type in 120. It might be that it's a part payment. So I might just want to pop in the value that they're actually paying. But what I also have at the top are some options to make this a little bit speedier. So the first one I'm going to highlight is the option to pay in full. What this does, if I ever click this button or use the F3 function key, is it will type in the full amount for me. So I don't need to start typing out each one along the way. So that's the pay in full option. And that's a really, really useful, particularly if you're trying to pay off in full a whole list. You can just click pay in full, pay in full, pay in full. No typing required. Now I'm just going to clear these out as well, just so I can demonstrate the next one. And this is the option for automatic. So it might be that they've given you a payment which doesn't really sort of link to an invoice. So for example, if I was to say £250 they've given me, and what I want to do is just start to allocate that, but allocate it to those most in need, so the oldest ones in the list. So what I can do is I can pop the amount in here and select automatic, and what it will do is it will automatically allocate that £250 to your oldest first and then on to the next oldest. So it's split that 250 across for me. So that's a really good feature that not many people are aware is there, but if you're doing lots of bulk payments towards many invoices, that might help your processing speed. So that's the automatic feature there. Now again, I'm just going to take these values out just so I can just demonstrate the next one for you there. Now what we do have here is the option to list invoice credit by item line. Now, unfortunately, I did set this up to demonstrate this, but it doesn't appear to be pulling through at the moment. Now, what this feature does is if you've got an invoice which actually has multiple posting lines, then what you can do is select for it to show each individual line, if that's ticked, or it can also group them together if it's unticked. So if you had an invoice that had sort of 10 posting lines, if you wanted to see the individual breakdown on the screen, then you can select this option here. Or if you just want them grouped together for the invoice total, then leave that box unticked. Okay, so what we're going to do next is I am just going to show you a payment of one of these invoices. And then what I would like to do is then show you the payment on account feature there. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly pop in an amount here. So I'm going to pay this one in full. And then I am going to save. And a quick question just come there about didn't allocate the oldest transaction allocated against the 2 September dates, and I apologize, that's my fault. It's not allocated against the oldest in terms of date, it's the oldest in terms of the transaction number. So it's picked up the first ones on the list and worked its way down the list. So sorry, that's my fault for confusing there. So it's basically, it's picking up the oldest transaction number, not the oldest transaction date there. So sorry for that one. Okay, so what we've got now is we've got that customer receipt, and we can have a look in transactions to show that customer receipt there for my £120 there. So I've got the payment there. If we just pop into the customer record, we can also view that in the activity, and you can see we've got my sales receipt is on there as well. So what it's just done there is also it's posted a sales payment on account. And I'm going to demonstrate this for you in just a moment on how to do this and how to achieve this. So you can see how a sales payment on account will be processed. But we've got our sales receipt there, and that is meaning that the payment has been received and it's allocated to the invoice. A payment on account means it's an outstanding payment, hasn't yet been allocated. So I'm just going to show you now how to allocate this one. So I'm just going to pop back into customer receipt. And I want to just pop the payment on account on first. Okay, so you can see here now, I've selected my customer. It's bringing out my outstanding invoices at invoice 2 and 4. And then we've also got the payment on account that's just been posted there. So what I'm going to do now is show you how you can post a payment on account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it in the value of this invoice here, so I can show that marrying off in just a moment. So to make it a payment on account, what I need to do is I need to ignore this column here. I need to just enter the value into here. So I'm just going to pop into here and pop the value in. Just going to leave the date as today's date. But remember, I'm ignoring this column here. And when I click save, what it's going to do is just say that there's an unallocated payment balance of 561.60. Do I want to post as a payment on account? Now, if I say no, it won't post anything. So if I say yes, what that will do is then post that payment on account for me. So if we pop back into customer activity, you can see the new payment on account there that I've just posted. So that means at the moment, if we look at these, we've got some outstanding values here. We can see that they're outstanding in the outstanding column because we've got the little asterisk next to them. So if we ran an aged debtors report, that would still pull up to say that this invoice was outstanding, when in fact, we have received a payment, but we just haven't sort of married the two together. So what we need to do is the process of allocating. Okay, so I'm just going to come out of here. And what we're going to then do is go back into customer receipt, select our customer. And again, as you can see, we're starting to add a few transactions to this window that are needing to be allocated. So to allocate is a really easy process. It's quite confusing because you do need to come into the customer receipt to do it, but there is a way of checking that you're not going to post any more transactions. So what I want to do is I want to marry off transaction 2 to transaction 7 here. So what I need to do is in the column for receipt is either pop the amount in that I'm allocating or pay in full, and do the same against the payment on account and pay in full here. Now what I always do is I always say, if you want to make sure you're not posting anything, just make sure your analysis total is 0. If the analysis total is 0, it means there's nothing to post. So when I click on save, if I come back to that customer, you see now they're no longer outstanding. They're no longer requiring allocation against one another, but we do still have two that do require allocation. If we look in the activity for that customer, what you can see there is my payment on account is no longer outstanding. And when we click on it, it shows me exactly where the payment's allocated to. And the same if we do the other way around, by clicking on the invoice, we can see where the payment on account has been allocated. Just another thing, you can enter a payment at the time of popping in the batch invoice. So if you're creating a batch invoice, and I always say this is good if you're playing catch up. If you do your postings at the end of the month, you might know that those invoices are already paid. So you do have the option to be adding these as you're processing the invoice. So say, for example, I'm processing an invoice now, I can pop all my invoice details in. It's calculated my VAT and my gross. But what I can then do is I can move into the amount paid. So again, I can pay in full. If I know that I need to pay this immediately because the payment's already been received, I can either pay in full or I can pop the amount in, pop in the pay date and tell it which bank account that the money's coming into. And again, what that will do is just post the invoice and the payment at the click of the save button there for you. So that's another really good way of trying to keep on top of your processing. If you're maybe doing it on a regular basis, not on a sort of daily basis, when you're playing catch up, it allows you to process it all in one window. Okay, so time always goes very quickly on these sessions. Please do get your questions across. I can see Abby's got a few there outstanding, so please do get them across to us. But I just want to very quickly talk about VAT cash accounting because it is slightly different. So I do have a quick demonstration for VAT cash accounting just in case anyone is on that particular VAT scheme. And the main thing we're going to be looking at here is when popping on payments on account. So I just pop into my VAT cash accounting company. And as you can see here, I have got another customer set up here. And say, for example, I'm receiving a payment on account, which we're going to process now. So just pop into that customer. And I'm going to say I'm receiving £120. Then what we can do here is when we save, we get the option of what tax code. Okay, so it's quite important here that you know what tax code the invoice will eventually come in on. Okay, now it can be amended afterwards, but if you know that the invoice will ultimately be on a T1, you need to make sure your payment comes through on a T1. Okay, so the rules with VAT cash accounting is that your tax code on your invoice must match whatever it's being allocated to. So I'm going to save this one on a T1, but you can change it. So if it was going to be a T0, you can change it. But we're just going to post this one on a T1, and I just want to show you what happens here. So it's saved that particular transaction, but if I come back into the customer to allocate, what you can see is I've got an invoice for £120, but I've got two payments on account. Now, if I try and allocate these two, bearing in mind the tax codes are different, and save, I will get this message. Okay, now this is something we get quite often, is calls into technical support saying I've got this message and I have no idea what it means. And it basically means we can't match the invoice on a T1 to a payment on a T0 on this VAT scheme. They have to match one another. So if we click OK, and if we attempt the same, but taking that out and popping it onto the payment on account on a T1 and pay in full, no message, no issue at all there. Okay, so that's very specific. That is VAT cash accounting. So it might not apply to all of you, but it is just something to be aware of if you're on that particular VAT scheme. Okay, so I'm going to pop back onto the slides now because we're coming towards the end there. And again, please do, if you've got any questions, get them across to us. I just want to very quickly talk about the upcoming webinars that we've got over the next few weeks. So just bring this one across. So in your email today, your follow-up email, you will have a link to our registration pages where you can join our future sessions. Now we are looking at improved bank feeds at the moment. So if you're looking at version 29.2, we do have improvements to bank feeds. And what we're trying to do is just give you that insight in advance prior to your upgrade so that you can see the new feature live in action. So those sessions are running throughout September, but this week we've got a focus on the quick learns, and from tomorrow Abby's going to be looking, in fact, sorry, this afternoon Abby's going to be looking at report design. So she's going to be looking at some of the simple things like adding a logo onto your invoice layout, but making sure how to do that so it all works correctly for you, and adding things like your bank details to your invoice layout and also payment terms as well. So do take a look at those, and as always you can register for as many sessions as you like, and they are all in fact free of charge. Okay, so I'm just going to jump onto the questions there, see if there's any that I can help out with. So just bear with me one moment while we just have a quick look just to see if there's any we can help out with, or if there's any that we can demonstrate there for you. Okay, just a quick question there that's come through that I'm just going to see if we can demonstrate there for you. And that was just around the automatic feature that I demonstrated earlier. So I'm just going to come back into that so you can see that window and just go through that again for you. So if I go back into customer receipt, and I've just quickly popped on a couple of extra transactions to try and demonstrate this one as well. So at the moment, it's showing my transactions in numerical order, so 4, 6, 10, 11. Now, as demonstrated earlier, what it will do is it will pick the first 2 in your list to allocate. So the question that was asked there was just that if we filter it to show the oldest at the top, will it allocate to go against those payments first? So the best way to do this is just to test it. So I'm just going to pop it a filter on the date. So I've just filtered it there, so you can see it's no longer by transaction number, but we do have it in date order there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop an amount of 400 and then click on automatic, and as you can see there, yes, it's allocated against the top 2 in the list there for you. So if you want it to be your oldest, pop that filter on, and I did that just by clicking on the date column. So we could change it round to the oldest first or to the newest first. So just click on the top grey bar and that will reorder it for you. So you could potentially filter by the other column, so it could be due on that you want to order it by. So you can use those options to your advantage. So yes, the automatic will always use the top ones in the list and will also apply it to those filters there. So I hope that answers that question there. Okay, so any final questions? Because like I say, we do try to wrap these up by past there. If there's any final ones, please do get them across to us. If you're done for today though, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you joining us on this session. Abby's back at 2 p.m. today. She's going to show you how to add a logo onto your invoices, statements, any documents, to be honest. So she's going to show you how you can do that using the report design feature. So one of the more simpler tasks in report design, which we can squeeze into a quick learn for you. Now, quick question there, just around the pay by card option. So if I just pop back into customer receipt, there is the option for pay by card. Okay, now I'm just going to pull across what happens when you click on this. Now this is something we're going to be covering in the next few weeks, and that's using something called Opeo. So it used to be called SagePay, but it's now called Opeo by Elavon. Now we are going to do a webinar that will go into more detail on that. But yes, you can set it up so that you can make or take payments via the software. And what this would do is launch into your Opeo account for you. So please do keep an eye out for that session. I think it's in a couple of weeks' time, and you can have a look into that with Michael. Okay, that brings us to past. So thank you very much everyone for joining us. And like I said, we really do hope to see you on another session really soon. There's still plenty of webinar content out there for you to join. If you've got any suggestions at the bottom of the page for the recordings and also for the webinars, there is a suggest a topic option. So please do use that to send your ideas across to us. We're constantly looking for new ideas on what content to deliver. But for now, thank you very much. Take care, everyone, and we will see you again very soon.